We're about to get into the meat of the NBA offseason, or if you're a vegan, I guess the veggies, the nitty gritty. There is a lot going on with the Golden State Warriors. Kenny Atkinson left. We barely touched on that yesterday. There's free agency that's about to show up. There's even a draft. I haven't been hitting that hard simply because the Warriors don't have a first round pick. They got one second rounder, number 52. But I have an awesome guest joining me next to cover all that. He's a beat reporter. That means he travels with the team. He's in the locker room. He's at every presser pretty much for the most part. And he's a phenomenal writer and media personality. Sam Gordon of the San Francisco Chronicle joins me next. Let's get into it. It's the Golden Days, baby.
That is it for us today, and we will leave you with I can't do it. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live. And things suck. Woo! Let's go.
In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up. Come on and break me off. Cause I get what I want and I like what I see. If you got shake that.
Oh yeah. Club Nation. Get the club. And Gordon in the house. Thank you for joining the Golden Days. I'm your host, Cyrus Saatsaz, and I've got a partner in crime with me on tonight's show. He's a beat reporter. He writes for the San Francisco Chronicle. The dude has intellect to go with everything else, which you don't see all that often in the sports media game, and I respect that tremendously. Sam Gordon, you can follow him on Twitter at @BySamGordon. It's his name with the word BY in front of it. Sam, great to see you, brother. Before we get into it, how the hell are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Cyrus. Gearing up for a big week. This is always a fun time in the NBA calendar, right? We got draft, we got free agency coming up, leads right into Summer League, and of course, USA basketball, international basketball, FIBA coming up on top of that. So there's no shortage of basketball this summer. It all gets going this week.
Absolutely, man. And we're finally getting to it. Like, this has been the longest, just kind of, I don't know how you would label this no man's land, no woman's land. I'm not being gender specific here in terms of just waiting between the Warriors' end of the season and the start of the actual action, which is the offseason. And that's just around the corner. We just got some news a day ago with Kevon Looney. The Warriors, again, we've been talking about this for about a week and a half on this show. I was telling folks it would shock me if Kevon Looney didn't come back just because the numbers didn't add up in terms of a benefit for cutting him. He's not that expensive, and $3 million guaranteed meant you'd be saving $5 million. That's not enough to cut Kevon Looney. So he stays. He got offered a guaranteed deal. Before we get into it, why don't we hear from Mike Dunleavy Jr.? He had a presser Monday. Were you at that, by the way, Sam?
Yep, I was there.
Awesome. So I don't know if we're going to hear your voice. I have two clips queued up, and the first one is about Mike Dunleavy Jr.'s strategy, his ethos, his philosophy in terms of building a team. And it may or may not make people happy hearing this. Some people want the team to be super active with free agency, being aggressive with trades. But what Mike Dunleavy Jr. said at yesterday's press conference is that he believes in what has worked for the Golden State Warriors, and that's internal development. Let's hear what the GM of the Golden State Warriors, Mike Dunleavy Jr., had to say about the current and future Golden State Warriors.
This time of year is fun. You got free agency, you got trades, you got draft, all ways to improve your team beyond what I think is the most important, which is internally, player development and that stuff. So we're looking at things. I think it's a little bit different this year, not having a first-round pick. We've got 52 in the second round, which I think hopefully we'll be able to find a quality player, a quality addition to the franchise. But, I think in that regard, all things will be on the table. We'll explore options and just like we do every year, kind of make the right decision and roll with it. So I'll open up to questions. I'm sure there's quite a few things to cover, but let's get through it.
Considering, I guess, your guys' situation, what free agency has become in the league, no first-round draft pick, as you said, is trade your best avenue to really change this team?
Again, I'm of the belief internal development is. I'm a big player development guy. I think our younger players have a really big chance to grow and get better. Pods, JK, Trace, Moses, and then even our guys we've had here for a while can get better. I think that's got to be the main thing. And then from there, you look to see what else is out there, and can you make a move or a couple moves or do some stuff that enhances your team. But if that's what's like the one thing we're hinging everything on, like it's so hard to make a trade now in the NBA. I think we got a lot of teams that are really smart. They know what they're doing to make a good quality trade that benefits both sides, which is what everybody's looking for. Is tough. And so we'll explore that stuff. A lot of conversations going on, but I don't want to like get ahead of it and just say like there's just going to be some big move that we're going to do and all that. Could be if it was there, great, but it's not like something that must happen.
First of all, I don't buy the propaganda that trades are that difficult. I think that's a line. I'm not buying it. But Sam, your reaction to I do agree with the overall sentiment that you build from within, whether it's drafting, whether it's being organic and developing players yourself. That's how the dynasty came to be in the first place. I can't argue against that. The trading being difficult thing, that's some propaganda in my opinion. But Sam, your reaction to Mike Dunleavy Jr.'s comments and the overall press conference, which you were there for.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a theme of the press conference, I think, was just the reinforcing the belief and the value that he feels like this young quartet has, and that he's not, is there mechanisms and avenues to make a trade? Yeah, of course, there's definitely mechanisms and avenues to make a trade, but they're not going to make a trade just for the sake of making a trade. It's got to make sense, especially if you're parting ways. I think at least this is my read on it, especially if the Warriors are going to part ways with Jonathan Kuminga, with Brandon Podziemski, with Moses Moody, with Trace Jackson Davis. Those guys all played at various junctures, key roles this past season. I think we saw improvement throughout the course of the season from all four players. Jonathan Kuminga showing he can get to the basket, he can finish, his bag developing a little bit, right? And there's I think a lot more untapped potential there as his feel for the game, as his feel for 5-on-5 on both ends of the floor continues to improve. Remember, he's 21, right? With Brandon Podziemski, you saw the way he was a connector on the offensive side of the ball. He led the team, of course, in plus minus. If you value those kinds of statistics,
well, it matters over a year, right? Would you agree with me? Like a sample size of a whole season to me carries some weight. Like a net rating for an individual game is totally subjective. And I started to interrupt you, but I just wanted to add that.
100. I mean, yeah, throughout the course of the whole season, I mean, again, you saw the way he was able to connect, on offense, and there's room for improvement there as well. I think both offensively and defensively, we saw what Trace Jackson Davis, the polish that he had in some ways, and then the way he was able to develop in other ways towards the end of the season, the impact he had defensively, and then Moses Moody taking on a different role at different times throughout the course of the season. You see potential there as a 3-and-D kind of player as he continues to develop as well. So again, given that they're young players, or there's going to be an affordability there, you would think with their contracts, you're not just going to make a trade for making it, for the sake of making a trade. The trade has to be done with intent of contending with, increasing your status as a championship contender. And we'll see what the trade market looks like if those kinds of trades are out there. I mean, speak of the trade, you just saw multiple reports. Woj and Shams reporting that Mikal Bridges went for 4 first-round picks, right? Like that's the kind of market. That's what the trade market might be shaping up. If you want,
don't forget the most important piece, Bojan Bogdanovic. I mean, without that, I mean, man, I'm cheesy. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, the 4 first-round picks is huge. Sorry,
sure. Is that going to set what the trade market is going to be looking like moving forward? I don't know. Could it? Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of advantages to having Mikal Bridges on your team. He's in his prime. He's on a team-friendly contract. Not every player that might be traded, the situations aren't all the same, but that could be a market-setting kind of deal. And in order to get a real impact player, what would the Warriors have to put on the table? So that was, I think, my overall takeaway. And then just, where they're at salary-wise, cap-wise, that is a vehicle for improvement, player development. As you mentioned, that's how the dynasty started. So there's value there with the young players, no doubt about it.
And look, I don't know how I know you gave a little peek into how you really feel about these youngsters right there. I have not been shy about Kuminga. I love the kid. I want his leash taken off. I want a whole season of him getting 30-plus minutes a game. I love the 4 youngsters, period. I think the Warriors have something there. You obviously have to still put pieces to support Steph. He is the golden child in all this, man. He is the superstar, the megastar, potentially going on Mount Rushmore. You got an asset like Draymond Green and a couple other veterans, but I love these youngsters. And when we're talking about trades, Who knows what Dunleavy was like, subliminally maybe like hinting at. I don't know if he was talking about the youngsters. He could have been referring to maybe Chris Paul, because that would be a lot more trickier when you're talking about a trade, trading Chris Paul. I mean, I don't know what you can get back for him. I don't know if it's even worth going down that avenue. I personally think that they're just going to let that contract expire and just let him walk. What are your thoughts on the Chris Paul situation? We're just days away from finding out. Unless they extend the deadline, I'm not even expecting that. But what are your thoughts on that, man? At least what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, and maybe they do push out maybe they do push out the deadline if they're searching for a trade. Chris Paul's salary guarantee might be, if you guarantee that $30 million, that might be a useful vehicle in facilitating a kind of trade, right? But again, I wouldn't expect that they're going to get a marquee player or a needle moving player, a kind of player that's going to put them back into contention in the Western Conference, right? Seeing how far they were this season, unless you're willing to put somebody like Jonathan Kuminga on the table. And is that something they're willing to do? At least at this juncture, it doesn't seem like it. So again, who knows what can materialize in the next couple of weeks, who might be available. But where things stand right now, in terms of Chris Paul, it feels like, waiving him, of course, makes a ton of sense with what you'd be able to save.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, and it gives them a chance to, for the first time in years, get below that luxury tax threshold. It gives them those mid-level exceptions. They're also eligible. And when I say exceptions, I say plural, because we had Eric Pincus on the show yesterday talking in nuanced detail about the salary cap, an incredibly complicated document that's organic. But we talked about the fact that the Warriors are eligible not just for the standard mid-level, close to $13 million. You can get some talent with that kind of cash, but then you're also eligible for the biannual mid-level exception, which is close to $5 million. And that's what you get by not re-signing Chris Paul. I think it's a no-brainer to go down that avenue. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you can add, a couple impact players, right? $12.9 million. That's enough to get a real impact player in free agency. It's a 25-minute a game kind of guy. We know where the Warriors need help. We know where their liabilities were as a team last season. You need more perimeter defense, point of attack defense, so you could use a little bit more size and more shooting, more floor spacing and some shot creation too, if you can get it. Now, big picture, in order to get the kind of shot creator that's going to make a real, big time impact, that's going to take you up a notch, that would, I think, have to come from trade. And again, with some of the internal development, I think Jonathan Kuminga has potential to be a 20-plus point per game scorer down the road. How quickly can he develop? What kind of player can he be this year? That being said, role players are super important, and you can get, I think, a couple high-level role players to fit in slots with those contracts for sure.
Same, man. And we're going to get into the last week. I covered every potentially available free agent in the Eastern Conference. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to resume that with the West. There are some names out there, man, and the Klay Thompson piece is obviously is what's holding up what's going to happen, for the whole offseason, just because the amount of money he will pull in if he stays will really limit options in terms of the mid-level. I don't know if the Warriors will spend much if they keep Klay, which is one of many wrinkles down that avenue. Before we, I want to talk about the Kenny Atkinson thing because he left, but real fast, just because there isn't much to talk about with this, unless you think differently. And if you do, clarify and correct me, please. But Klay Thompson, right now, I feel like it's a 50-50 shot. What we've heard out there, and again, I don't trust pretty much anything I'm hearing, but going off what is being written and said, the Orlando Magic are interested, but they don't want to give a long-term deal, but they still might give a 2-year deal with a lot of money in those 2 years. Philadelphia might be interested. I'm not really hearing many other names besides those two. What are you thinking? What are you hearing about Klay Thompson? Again, from my perspective, 50-50. He could stay, he could go. There's clearly some acrimony going on there with the negotiations. Take it away, sir.
Well, if the Warriors, if it was priority number one, I think for the Warriors to bring him back, that would have happened by now, right? They've had the opportunity to negotiate with him since the NBA Finals wrapped up. And we would have heard about a deal by now, right? If that would have happened. It hasn't. So that kind of shows you that where their priorities stand. That being said, I do think there's going to be a market for Klay. I think the Warriors are going to see what that market looks like. I think Klay and his representation are going to see what that market looks like. And then, conversations might start from there. But yeah, I'm with you. 50-50. I don't know if he knows. I don't know if the Warriors know. There's a lot of variables at play. And I think one of them is what that market looks like. What can he command at this stage of his career, right? We know still an incredible shooter, right? 268 threes, fourth in the NBA. He was 40% his last 40 or 41% his last, I think, 28 games. He was able to find his form, and we also know that he's not the player that he once was, 4 or 5 years ago, and that's understandable given where he's at this stage of his career. So there will be a market, but if he comes back to Golden State, it's going to be, presumably in a different role, and who knows what he wants at this point after how the negotiations have or haven't gone with Golden State.
Totally. And in the chat, a lot of people talking about this Mikal Bridges trade from the Nets to the Knicks. Obviously, that's an earth shaker. We'll try to get to that toward the end of the show if we have time. But just because I would like to see all the facts come through. Right now, it's literally just what Woj dropped, and there's going to be a lot more coming through it. Huge trade. If we have time, we'll get to that at the end. But just not a lot of facts yet. And I would like to get a little more information on that before. Because somebody in the chat, for example, if this is the Brandon Cadiz I know who hosts Strength in Numbers, for example, he writes that the Knicks are now hard capped after the trade. If my information is correct, the hard cap is the first apron, which I believe is 178, 179 million. What that means is they no matter what, they cannot go a penny above that amount. The hard cap sucks. The Warriors were in it back in 2020. Anything you want to add to that, Sam, before I change subjects here?
No, I mean, I'm not, I don't, we'll see what happens, right? There are going to be some residual effects of this trade. It's a huge trade throughout the league, but I want to wait and kind of see what they are before I weigh in.
Absolutely. Because I don't even know for sure if it is hard cap. They're going to do my own research, but there's a lot of things that could trigger a hard cap. Sure. There's so many little things like what do you, for example, using the mid-level exception and then adding money on top of that to sign a player hard caps you, sign and trades hard cap you. There's so many weird little things. I don't know what's going on there. We'll do some more research in a little bit. And Brandon, what is up with you? Nick, what's up with you? Because people are talking about the fallback from that trade potentially being Isaiah Hartenstein, if I said his name correctly, being an asset that the Warriors could pursue if he's affordable and available for mid-level exception.
He's gonna have a market for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And see, these are the kind of questions. Again, I got to do research. Like No Cap in the chat, great to see you, by the way. Been a while. Writes, what happens to OG Anunoby now? And that's where bird rights get trumped by the hard cap. If my facts are correct, so that means that the Knicks can only offer OG Anunoby up to the hard cap amount. Again, there's so much to come down. I don't know it's too early to answer questions like that, but we'll talk about that and so much more in a little bit. Kenny Atkinson. Folks who watch this show are very understanding of how I feel about Kenny the last 2 years. He became the defensive coordinator, and the results, in my opinion, were not satisfactory, man. The results were not in line with championship expectations. Kenny Atkinson hired as the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I love it because it forces Steve Kerr to bring some fresh blood in, maybe someone who actually is a defensive expert. I'm sure you're going to write about this for the San Francisco Chronicle soon, but Monty Poole, our media colleague who writes for NBC Sports Bay Area, he dropped 6 names. And I just want to list those names real fast, Sam, and get your thoughts on them. These are 6 names who could step in and replace Kenny Atkinson, who took over for Mike Brown. And again, huge hole there ever since Mike Brown left. It's obvious. All the results show. So the 6 names that Monty Poole listed as potential replacements on the coaching staff as the number 1 assistant, J.B. Bickerstaff, who was most recently the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, James Borrego, who a lot of people thought was going to be the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers before Kenny Atkinson, I think, surprised a lot of people by getting that job. Longtime assistant Chris DeMarco, who was around during the Mark Jackson era. Becky Hammond, interesting name. Terry Stotts, a longtime Portland Trailblazers head coach. And then Frank Vogel. One name that I didn't see here mentioned, who's out there as well, Alvin Gentry could be a possibility. I don't know if he's maybe too old at this point. Your thoughts? Anyone else you want to throw in there? And what are your thoughts on the current openings? I think there's 2 openings actually on the assistant coaching staff.
Yeah, I think again, shout out Monty. That's a great list. I think again, you kind of look at what Steve Kerr brought in when he brought in Kenny Atkinson, former head coach, veteran, experienced, had a voice, and you would think that he'd want to hire somebody similar. I think you go to Frank Vogel. Know his defensive track record, has a championship as a head coach. Might that be a spot that makes sense for him, right? If you're talking about defense, we know he can coach defense. So yeah, I think all those names bring a lot to the table and have their various strengths, and would expect, again, Kerr to go with somebody that's experienced, that's been around the game for a long time, and that has different perspective, maybe one that's different from his own, for sure.
Any names that you feel like that you've thought of that wasn't included in his article? Another name, before you answer that, maybe I'm buying you a few more seconds just in case I give you a shitty question. I apologize. But another name that's out there, and this is from, look, and Sam, I don't know if you get a laugh out of there's a lot of individuals out there who their entire livelihood is based on throwing the word sources out and then just throwing a lot of nuggets that may have zero validity behind it. And one of those reports, and this is the time of year where they're really thriving, one of those reports said that Brent Barry is reportedly leaving as the GM of the San Antonio Spurs G League team, and that he's leaving the Spurs altogether. I'm a huge fan of Brent Barry. The idea of Brent was not my genesis. This was actually Bob Myers pursued him some years back for the job that Mike Dunleavy Jr. eventually got it. But when I heard that story, my immediate thought was, that's someone who's a very sharp mind when it comes to basketball. The progeny's there. His path is very similar to Steve Kerr's, except way less championships. And obviously it's not exact. But my point is, if Brent Barry's out there, that's another name. And again, I have no idea if that story is true or not. Rick Barry and I are going to be doing a show tomorrow. That's his dad. I'm obviously going to bring it up with Rick. But your thoughts on that story and any other names that we may have missed for the assistant jobs?
I think Brent's that's interesting. I hadn't seen that or seen that attachment, but again, I think you touched on the reasons why it would make sense. And again, the connection with Rick Barry. I see somebody in the chat, Adrian Griffin would be a good assistant. I mean, he was a good assistant in Toronto for sure. And I mean, look at how Milwaukee performed with Adrian Griffin compared to without Adrian Griffin, right? I mean, I don't know the specifics of that situation, but it seems like that might have been an impulsive decision there. We'll see what the Bucks look like down the road, but I think he's a super interesting name and somebody that would have pedigree in that spot as well. So that's a great suggestion.
Absolutely, man. I agree. So we'll see what happens with the assistant jobs. Again, Steve Kerr right now has his hands full with Team USA. Are you pumped about that, by the way? I haven't been this excited for Olympic basketball in a long ass time. What are your feelings about that?
I think it's going to be super competitive this year. I'm really excited. I'm going down to Vegas next week. I'm going to be covering Team USA training camp as a lead into Summer League. So we know how talented the USA's roster is. It's going to be interesting to see what style they choose to play, how you blend that collection of talent. So many guys used to being the top dog on their respective teams. What does that group look like? And then around the world, look at how much basketball, look at how global it's become, how much some of these other teams have improved. I saw Canada's roster, training camp roster came out. Andrew Wiggins, a part of that.
Yes.
What's interesting to me is just kind of the roster construction. It kind of natural. There seems to be a hierarchy or just a structure in place. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, runner-up for MVP, Jamal Murray, your two scorers. You have wing defenders like Dylan Brooks and Andrew Wiggins who can play. And then you have bigs, Kelly Olynyk, Dwight. You can play different styles. And there's some continuity in that program. Serbia should be good. If Jokic is a part of that team, Slovenia, there's France. There's all these teams that are rock solid. So I'm really excited. As strong as the USA's collection of talent is, I'm expecting a really competitive tournament.
Absolutely. The Team Canada lineup alone is insane. It's absolutely insane. The competition is stiff. There's no doubt. I feel like Team USA's roster rivals the Dream Team in terms of talent,
for sure.
Cachet. Let me ask you this, man. If Team USA doesn't win, how much heat do you think Steve Kerr gets?
I mean, I think the expectation for Team USA every time out is to win gold, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the standard. That's the expectation, and that's the challenge, and that's what he's facing. And so, he knows that. He knows what he signed up for and what the standards are. So,
yes.
Yeah,
it is weird that he has legitimate pressure on him, I think, to win. I don't think that's the case with every Olympics, but He does, and I'm super intrigued. Again, I'm really excited to watch this. Congrats on going to Vegas, by the way, man. I hope that we touch base at some point before or after that. I love your content, dude. I read your stories. Every time you come on the show, I love your energy. So I'm a fan, brother. I'm a fan, and I'm looking forward to that. Real fast in the chat, someone wrote, "This is the Pull Up Basketball Podcast." Hello, saying. Look, if you ever want to reach out to me, and this goes for anyone, just email me. The email address is warriors24pod@gmail.com. Business inquiries, guest appearances, you name it. Just shoot me an email and we'll make it happen. And then there's one other thing in the chat I wanted to touch on real fast. Oh, here, Nick. Do I try to pronounce that last name? Chazapentelis. Please forgive me if I messed that up. Writes, could you touch on Stephen Curry's contract extension news? You're right. Not many people talk about it. My understanding, I don't know if you have much information on this, Sam, but my understanding is he's eligible for a 1-year contract extension at the absolute max amount. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Warriors gave it to him. Mm-hmm. But the one weird thing about Stephen Curry and contract extensions is the last time he got his extension, which was a max deal, for a brief moment, he was the highest paid player in the NBA. But Joe Lacob, and I read this a column recently. I forgot who wrote it, but Joe Lacob supposedly prides himself on contract negotiations. Not surprising to hear that. And with the Stephen Curry thing, he initially did not offer that 5th year. And he quickly changed his mind and offered the 5th year, probably to avoid the negative feedback that would come on him if, for whatever reason, Stephen Curry made an issue of it. But the point is, I have no idea if they're going to give him that contract extension. I have no idea if Steph wants it. Do you know anything about that? I just wanted to touch on that real fast since it was asked in the chat. And
yeah,
Sam, obviously no.
Yeah, extension eligible, but don't know where negotiations stand. Not sure where things stand with that yet. As of right now, what we do know is that Steph Curry, Steve Kerr, Draymond Green's contracts line up together. So that's where things stand right now. We'll see what happens and how those negotiations progress, if they progress in the coming weeks.
Absolutely, man. And we got Sam Gordon here. If you're listening on the podcast, you can follow him on Twitter at @BySamGordon. Sam, there is a lot of chatter. I have yet to see any of it rooted in reality. What I mean by that is I haven't seen an actual substantive report indicating that there is any form of truth behind this, but it's a sexy topic. It's big names. And I'm talking about Paul George, quite a few people, and they're all pundits, and they're just throwing it out there in the same way that I've been throwing Giannis to the Warriors out there for about a month now. I still want that energy out there. I have no idea why Giannis thinks things are going to magically turn around in Milwaukee. Giannis, it's over. The Warriors will sign your little brother, and they could actually give him more than the veteran minimum so we can steal him away from Milwaukee. Giannis, come right after, please. But again, it's the same vein. In this case, it's a hypothetical trade. Paul George going to the Golden State Warriors. I don't think this is going to happen. When Mike Dunleavy Jr. said trades are hard, that's an example of a trade being hard. You would the matching up the numbers. Paul George, who knows if he wants to stay with the Warriors beyond next season, which is important. So I don't think this is rooted in reality, but everyone's talking about it. I'm bringing it up. Sam, your thoughts on a potential Paul George to the Warriors trade?
It's interesting to think about, right? And to talk about. I mean, I guess as it pertains to Paul George in general, and I'm not, the first person to make this point. We've seen this as a kind of a talking point nationally as well, but a real domino. He has a lot of leverage here in his situation with the Clippers, being that he can opt in or opt out, and he can essentially tell them, look, if we could, let's work something out here, or else you're going to lose me for nothing. And there are teams where he makes a ton of sense in free agency, right? Orlando could definitely use his experience, his shooting, him as a complimentary scorer to Paolo Banchero. Philly could use him for the exact same reasons. Of course, in Golden State, I mean, if you're just thinking about the fit of the player and how he fits, yeah, he's a fit in Golden State as well. The intrigue, it would be obvious. He's 41% from the floor or from 3-point range. He can do some some secondary creation stuff. He doesn't put the pressure on the rim the way he once did, but a very efficient shooter. Still, I think a quality defender. Again, not the defender he once was at his peak, but a quality defender with length that can switch and can give you some things on that end. But again, as you mentioned, super complicated to make the trade work out. And what would you have to give up? Are the Clippers just going to send Paul George up to the Warriors and just for for expiring contract. Like, I don't know. So,
it's like, I mean, it makes, I don't understand how that would work either. It is, but it's a fun topic, right? Are there any other, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. And just again, if there are players available in the trade market, or if guys, if it's, you would expect Mike Dunleavy, the Warriors, to at least do their due diligence, whether anything is going to materialize or not. So I think it's definitely worth doing your due diligence on any player that might be available for trade, seeing what the package would be, what it would cost to give up. But ultimately, again, it would be, I think, challenging overall. There's ways it could happen, but a challenge to bring them here nonetheless.
Any other names out there that stick out to you as a player that, in your mind, if let's say hypothetically you're the GM of the Warriors, is there anyone out there that you think would be fantastic on this team that has some plausibility in terms of a trade or free agency? Anyone stick out to you that you think would be a great fit for the Warriors?
I mean, another kind of prospective trade candidate you've kind of heard, around the room, Jimmy Butler. I mean, we saw the Pat Riley's press conference a few weeks ago, right? I mean, he's been there 5 years, extension eligible. Do the Heat want to give it to him? He seems like a trade candidate too. How would he fit in Golden State? There's a lot to like about what he brings to the table. At the same time, he's 35. He's going to be 35 when the season starts. He's going to want a contract extension. Those are things to think about as well. But in terms of the archetype of player, a wing that can score, that can defend, that can put pressure on the rim, that's I think the dream archetype for who the Warriors want to add. It's just, are those players available, and does the Warriors do they have a package that's enticing for these other teams that might want to trade one of these players?
Absolutely with you. Like, I wouldn't give up Kuminga for him, but for the right asking price, and he's a bit polarizing. Like, there are some Warriors fans out there, when you bring up Jimmy Butler, they bring up the age, they bring up durability, but I am with you. I literally, the excitement I get thinking of Jimmy Butler paired with Steph, with Draymond, and the postseason, like, because that's what Jimmy Butler is made for. And this Warriors team is made for the postseason. It would make them instant contenders. Sign me up. You'd also be attracting other free agents. Yeah, he excites me too. I'm absolutely with you. And AC in the chat asking, would you trade Wiggins for Bruce Brown? I trade Wiggins for air. I trade him for a PlayStation 4, not a 5, a 4. But that's me. And for the simple reason that by trading him for nothing, you're giving more space for Kuminga, for Moses Moody to play. But if Bruce Brown is coming back, hell yeah. Sam, I know I'm weird when it comes to Andrew Wiggins. What are your thoughts on this prospective trade and Wiggins in general?
We saw the finals, Boston and Dallas. We're only 2 years. I know it was 2 years ago, but Andrew Wiggins showed his value in that series and showed what he's capable of. Of course, this past season was underwhelming. He talked about that at his exit interview a couple months ago. But at his best, he's the kind of guy you need to win in the playoffs. That being said, Bruce Brown is too. He's really good, secondary ball handler or tertiary ball handler, good defender, great cutter, can knock down a jumper. There's a lot to like about Bruce Brown, but I'm still bullish on Wiggins as a winning player. I think he's only 29. He's playing again. He's in training camp with Canada. Maybe that gives him a lift going into the season. And again, still only 29, and the archetype of player that you need, I think, to win at the highest level. A two-way wing that doesn't command a lot of volume offensively. He can score in a variety of ways while not taking away from what you want to do offensively. So, but again, Bruce Brown, he brings a lot of likable traits too. So a lot to like about both players, in my opinion. Sam,
let me know what you think about this. I know we're up against the clock here. I just saw the time. I'm so sorry. We're wrapping it up. My thought is, if Klay Thompson doesn't come back and you move Andrew Wiggins to Klay's old position, Wiggins' natural position, the 2, 2022 was an anomaly, man. Like Andrew Wiggins was playing power forward that entire postseason. They're never getting away with that again, right? I mean, it was just a weird year where size took a back step to athleticism, to shooting, and you can't do that again. I love the idea of Wiggins as your shooting guard because defensively, you're suddenly that much better Wiggins is not a liability shooting wise. That's the part of his game last year that he got back that really made me relieved in terms of seeing Wiggins minutes is he was hitting his 3-point shot. That percentage went up. It was some astronomical number from February through April. I think he was the leading 3-point shooter on the team during that span. So under that scenario where you have a lineup, let's say a starting five of Curry, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond, Trayce Jackson-Davis, or maybe you upgrade Trayce Jackson-Davis. And I'm only bringing that up because as good as TJD is, maybe Hardenstein is someone you bring in, and then you'd probably have to bench Trayce Jackson-Davis, but it'd still give him a lot of minutes. My point is, I like Wiggins as the 2. I don't think he's a liability on this roster. That's my opinion. I mean, there's a lot of people like you who think he's just good, period. But your thoughts on Wiggins as a shooting guard? Like, do you see what I'm saying? And do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, definitely. I think the most important thing in order for this team to get back to the competitive level that they expect, it's about shoring up their defense. And I think he's part of this solution there, and not part of the problem. And again, you mentioned his offense at the last chunk of the season. He kind of found it. He found a groove. I think he was close to 15 a game. The efficiency improved across the board. And again, we saw what he can do defensively. So yeah, the more wing defenders you can have on the floor at the same time, I think the better. The more two-way players. You look at Boston, they had five, more than 5. Even their bench guys relative to opposing benches were two-way bench players. And that's ultimately how you win at the highest level. The Warriors in their heyday, it was the exact same thing. So I like the vision there. I see the vision there where you're coming from, and that I think increases what you can build on the defensive end of the floor for sure.
And I think that's how you maximize Wiggins, right? I mean, you want to get the most out of him. Currently, he's your second highest paid player on the roster. Even I don't know how that would hold if Klay hypothetically came back, but he'd still be top 2 or 3. Real fast, Bailey Bauer in the chat again. Email me on future shows. I started doing this last week. I'm putting the link in the chat for people to come on the show. So if you want to wait for a show in the near future, I'll bring you on. Otherwise, shoot me an email. I am available, warriors24pod@gmail.com if you want to contact me. Sam, I know you got to run, man. Let's make this a regular thing. I absolutely love having you on the show. Before we let you go, promote Away Serve. You got the San Francisco Chronicle as your beat. You're pumping out content there. People can follow you on Twitter @BySamGordon. Anything else you like to promote, please shoot away.
Well, first and foremost, Cyrus, very much appreciate you having me. I always enjoy our conversations as well. And yeah, it's going to be, the NBA draft is Wednesday, Thursday. That funnels right into free agency. So we got a lot of stuff coming. It should be a fun week.
Oh my God, we didn't even touch on that. That was one of the big topics I wanted to talk about was the draft. Real fast before you go. Is it even worth the energy to think about? The Warriors have the number 52 pick. I have never been more bored in my life of an NBA draft and disinterested. It's also talent-wise lacking. Your thoughts on the draft, man? Is there anybody that sticks out to you? Is there anything you've heard or you think? Let's finish on that note because we didn't even touch on the draft.
Well, they found TJD at number 57, right?
True.
And could you find? I think the vision is to find at that stage of the draft. You're looking with a player with a trait or two in NBA, whether that's 3-point shooting, whether that's defense. Find a trait that can get you on the floor. For TJD, it was his rebounding, his shot blocking, and his rim rolling. And then there's other things to like that you can develop around that. But he was mature. He was physically ready to play. I would expect the Warriors to target a similar kind of archetype. And at that juncture in the 50s, it's more likely than not that said player isn't going to have a long career. But there's always a chance. And where the Warriors are at right now with their financial situation. Every opportunity, you have to take this number 52 pick seriously. There is a chance they find a shooter or a wing defender or another big that can play down the road. So in terms of specific names, I'm not necessarily, we got to see how tomorrow plays out, but I do, the Warriors, you look at who they brought in to work out. It was a lot of veteran wing players and bigs that could shoot, 4th and 5th year college guys that could shoot, that can defend, at least at the college level that you kind of want to take a flyer on. So I think that's the direction that they'll go. And if you can find somebody that can jump in your rotation, whether that's an 8th, 9th, 10th, if you spot minutes at that point, that's a W. So it should be fun. Maybe not the traditional draft in the sense that it's loaded. You have your Victor Wembanyama's, your Zion, your slam dunk number 1, 2, 3 picks. But the unpredictability of it from at least a watching standpoint, a viewership standpoint, knowing that we don't know a lot about, who's going to profile as the best player, that's what makes it fun. So very much looking forward to the draft and seeing who the Warriors take a flyer on. I expect a veteran college player, either most likely on the wing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And Sam, I'm looking forward to your coverage. Follow Sam on Twitter at @BySamGordon. For everyone in the chat, like Clarence Beeks writing, stay on. There are some major watch bombs. You're right, but I'd rather let that shake. I'd rather let all the residuals, come to earth and we get the facts straight. We're back at this tomorrow. Larry Krueger and I are doing a joint show at 12, a new episode of the Rick Barry Show, and we're on this every day. Sam, I'm gonna get you back on. I'm gonna drag you here if I have to. You're too valuable. I treasure you, sir. So I want your contributions on this program regularly. That's okay. And thanks to everyone for joining the program as always. Again, we migrated a little over a week ago, and to see the audience come over, it warms me, man. I cannot thank everyone enough. And Sam, I can't thank you enough for taking time to join the show. We'll be back at this soon. Thanks, Sam.